right. There. Now you are not muted.
No, I am not muted. Thank you for your
And
patience.
yes, I said when I saw you in the waiting room, I said, "Oh, his wife is gonna come instead," which is fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was.
No, we were. She has a professional account, so she was hosting. We hosted a thing with the cast of If Then a few days ago. So,
I don't know.
Guys,
let me figure out one thing because it is not switching on my screen. My head is still the huge head. I don't want my head to be the huge head. Why? There we go.
There. Okay.
All right. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good. Good. So you are home with your wife and your kids, stuck at home.
I am quarantined here. This is it. And yeah, so we found out on March 12th that we were not coming back to do any shows. And it was really weird because we were actually rehearsing to have the new cast come in, which I was sticking around for another year. And so I never got to sort of have a final performance. And then there were like a few kids who were about to have their Broadway debut and they didn't have the chance to do that. So this has been a bummer, I think, for a lot of people, huh? How about you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can like nod.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at everybody. It's great. It's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's it. It's very weird to have Broadway shut down. I just went back to the theater and Times Square is completely empty. There were I probably saw 10 people the entire time I was in Times Square. I drove up right in front of the theater and then parked and then went in. I had to get stuff because we had just left all of our stuff in the whatever I could carry on March 12th. I took off with and that was it. And I spend a lot of time there when I'm doing the show. I get there around 10:45 in the morning on 2 show days, and I leave around 10:40 at night. So I spend about 12 hours at work, which is crazy.
Yeah. So I saw the Insta story where you were driving through New York, which was crazy. I saw the show in February. So my son and I were there in February. And so when you were like pulling up and like Old Navy and Gap are right there, we had to buy my son pants at Old Navy because I've
had to buy pants at Old Navy. It's like I'm wearing a workout outfit from Old Navy.
Yeah, so I was like, this is crazy. Like Times Square has no people in it. It's completely weird. So
you guys want to know a little bit about me and how I became an actor and stuff like that? All right. Yeah. I can see you. So if you nod, I go, oh, good. They're paying attention.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So I grew up out in Northern California, outside Sacramento, in a little town called Rancho Murieta. And I was always like a ham and I loved music, but I hadn't really done any plays or any theater whatsoever. I sang in a talent show a couple times. And then when I was in high school, I auditioned for the school musical, which was Godspell. I went to Christian Brothers High School. Matthew, hold on. I just have to put a pause. Matthew, that's an awesome picture and an awesome background. I'm super impressed. That is rad. Look at you. Oh, I miss it. Look at that.
That's my son.
So. Yeah, I gathered as much. So anyway, so I grew up and then I did my first musical when I was a freshman. So when I was 14 and I played the lead role, I played Jesus in Godspell. And that's sort of when I went, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And then later when I was probably 16 or 17, I realized that I could go to college and study theater. I had no idea. I really hadn't thought about it that hard. And so I auditioned for a program at the University of Southern California. I had to do 2 monologues. And then I got into a program. And once I got to college, that's really where I got to do a ton of plays. I probably did like 45 plays in the 4 years I was there and studied. And it was in Los Angeles where I went to school. So I started auditioning for TV shows. And by the time I graduated, I was auditioning for TV shows and I was on the Gilmore Girls and a couple other smaller gigs here and there. And then just started doing plays. And I kept doing plays in like tiny little theaters for like 50 people. And then eventually I started to do bigger and bigger things. And I'd be performing for like 700 people. and eventually one of those shows that I did called Rock of Ages it was about to go off Broadway, and I auditioned to do a workshop of it, and I booked that. And once I did that, the week I was in New York City, I lived in Los Angeles, but I was in New York City. I auditioned for a musical called Cry Baby, which was going to Broadway, and I ended up playing the lead role in Cry Baby. I played Cry Baby, and I was 26, and so it was crazy. And all of a sudden, I got thrown into this whole huge world of musical theater and Broadway. And really, the biggest thing I'd done at that point was this movie called She's the Man with Amanda Bynes. And that was, if you haven't seen it, you guys are about the right age, you probably could watch it. And it's a crazy movie where she dresses up like a boy to play on the soccer team, on the other school's soccer team, because they wouldn't let girls play on the soccer team. And it's based on a Shakespeare play called Twelfth Night. And so that was sort of the biggest thing, because it had Channing Tatum and Amanda Bynes. And all of a sudden I found myself on Broadway, and sort of never looked back, and went and I've done 4 Broadway shows so far, and a few other off-Broadway things and concerts and things. And I did a thing in Sacramento at the Music Circus. I did Beauty and the Beast there, and I've done some things at New York City Center and in Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh CLO. And so the life of an actor is pretty crazy, because sometimes you only work on a show for a few weeks and then it's done. Or you only work on set for a day and then you're done. Gilmore Girls, my first co-star, I worked for 1 day. And I had to sit in my trailer for about 12 hours before they even called me to come on to set. So I sat in my costume for 12 hours, and it took them that long. I got there at noon, and I left around 1 o'clock to say my 3 lines. And that was crazy. I think Melinda has a question. I don't know if we want to answer questions or move on to that part yet.
Oh man, I gotta find. I don't know how to find people. So if you have, I'll unmute you right now, but then if you know how to use the chat feature, you can type in the chat and then I can ask, okay? But here you go, you can ask.
Oh, there you go, perfect. All right, well, Melinda, you get the one shot.
I am clicking unmute and it is not unmuting. Oh, there we go.
Okay. So my question is, like, who were you in the play Beauty and the Beast?
I played the Beast, actually, which was crazy, because my makeup, the first time I did the makeup, it took over 2 hours to put the makeup on, which was crazy. I had latex over here, like, that looked like this crazy looking brow. And let me see if I can find it. And then I had this chin with these 2 tusks coming up and this huge nose. And they would glue it onto my face, and then they would airbrush. They would lay down a layer of foundation makeup, and then they would airbrush all the details so that I looked just like the Beast. Let me see if I can find a picture of Beauty and the Beast here while we're talking. And so, it was a ton of fun. By the time we finished and were ready to do the show, we had gotten how long it took down to about an hour and change. But it also meant that between shows, I didn't really leave the theater. So I just kind of sat there, and they brought me food, and I just sat in my dressing room because I had to just basically finish the show, do bows, and then hang out, and then go right back into makeup once I was done with that. So, but I played Beast, so I as far as the characterization, I tried to stay very low, and also when you're doing something fun like that, Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite cartoons, the animated feature, and I loved being able to pull in, sort of the cartoony aspects of it too. And so that was a lot of fun. And then it's also just very beautiful music. And so to show you guys, I don't know if you can see, that's me under all of that makeup. And that wig weighed so much. It was this huge, it had these huge horns that twisted out of my head. Let me see if I can find any more. Yeah, I mean, just crazy. Nicole Chilelli, who was the designer, she here's just me hanging out after the show, or before the show actually, with with it on, but I'm just hanging out like in normal clothes. That's my buddy Kevin Ram. Let's see if I have any others. No, that's about it. But it was crazy. It was also just a lot of fun. And that's the fun part about being an actor, is you get to do a lot of different things. So that summer, I played Elvis Presley right before that. So 2 weeks before that, I was Elvis, like rocking and rolling. And then the very next thing, all of a sudden I was Elvis, which was crazy. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So do you have a favorite role, not counting Harry, if that happens to be your favorite role? Do you have?
Harry's great. I would say one of my favorites, I did this musical called Carousel at Goodspeed Opera House. That was sort of one of the like really sort of, that's what I would say that one of my proudest moments on stage was working on that show. And Harry Potter, there's nothing like it. Really, every time you do a show, it's like you have a little family, and you make this little family. And especially with a Broadway show, if you're doing it for a year or even 6 months, it's a long time to spend in one building with a lot of people. And so really, it's almost like when someone asked me what my favorite show was or favorite role, it's almost like saying like who my favorite parent is or who my favorite cousin is or something. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, they're all great because they're all such a wonderful experience and made me so much of who I am. And I've always tried to approach every role on what can I learn about myself and the world every time I do a different role, no matter how big or how small. Because sometimes I've had teeny tiny little roles and it's like, well, what can I learn here? So I watch the people who are older than me, who've been doing it longer, who are better than me, and try and just pay attention and learn something from the way that they go about rehearsing and performing and existing.
So real quick. So someone asked, since you mentioned Gilmore Girls, someone asked who you were on Gilmore Girls.
Oh, I played Yale guy number 2. So there was one episode, it was my very first job on TV. And so, I had like 3 or 4 lines, and I pretty much, Rory's grandma was just trying to set her up with a bunch of guys from Yale. And I was Yale guy number 2 and basically ignored her. And that was my function on that. But it was all so much fun and so new to me that it was just, it was great.
So you have had several situations, whether a TV pilot or a Broadway show, that maybe were not quite as successful as you had hoped that they would be going into them. So how did those harder times kind of shape you as an actor and prepare you for the not so hard times?
Well, being an actor is actually almost more about auditioning and being able to survive unemployment, because more often than not, I'm not employed or I'm trying to get a job. And so that means that there are dozens of auditions that I go on before I book another job. Like before I booked Harry Potter, I hadn't done a Broadway show in a year and a half. And I'd only done 2 or 3 things since then. So it was a year and a half really that I had done anything sizable, I'll say. And it just little jobs that I could find here and there, or teaching. I teach voice and acting. And so I was just doing that. And so I had auditioned, I had gotten down to the wire. If you guys know the musical Waitress, maybe you guys have heard of the musical Waitress. So they were finding replacements for the Drew Gehling, who's the original guy who did it. They were looking to replace him because he was leaving to go do a show. And I worked really, really, really hard on the audition. And I thought I was perfect for it because I had just done a role very similar in this musical If Then that I did. And I've been on Broadway, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And I went in and I didn't get that job. And I wanted it so bad because I love that musical and I thought I was perfect for it. Well, I was heartbroken, and it sort of made me, it made me super sad. But the next time I got an audition, the very next audition that I got was Harry Potter. And the lesson that I had, luckily my heart had been broken, because I said, you know what, it doesn't matter. It's not about me. I'm just going to be the best actor that I can be. That's my job. is to just do and make it about the work. And when I say the work, about doing, honestly telling what the character is going through, telling that story from me and my life. And that's how I work. And so I went, you know what? I'm not going to book this. I didn't book Waitress. So all I'm going to do is just be the best actor they've ever seen. And I worked so hard on that one too. But this time it wasn't about like, oh, I'm perfect for it. I went, I don't know if I'm going to get this. It doesn't matter if I get this because I'm going to work my hardest. And sure enough, I was heartbroken by not getting Waitress, but then I ended up booking Harry Potter, which has been the biggest job I've ever had. So pretty cool.
Yeah. So in just a second, we're going to get to all the Harry Potter stuff that I know everyone is here for. But my first introduction to you was in If Then. So I bought the cast album and fell in love with the show. I love that show so much. But I wonder for you, so we're the same age, graduated in 99, yes?
Yep.
Yeah. And then I graduated from college in 03. And so I was like a major rent head at that stage of my life. So I'm wondering if you were as well, and if getting cast with Anthony Rapp and Idina Menzel, were you like just a total professional, or were you like, what is happening in my life?
Yeah, the third cast album I ever owned was Rent, and I knew it backwards and forwards. And all of a sudden, we had the same director as Rent. Rent was like Dear Evan Hansen, bigger than Dear Evan Hansen here. I'm trying to think of something comparable. Wicked, I guess you could kind of say, but cooler than that. I mean, Hades Town. I don't know, but it was the biggest thing. And so when I stepped into the room with all of these people that I've been listening to since I was in high school, it was a little crazy, but I love people and I love connecting with people. And luckily I've hung out with some famous people. And so I tried to not let that intimidate me. And luckily Broadway, because it's such a small community, there aren't a lot of people who do Broadway, that everyone really is supportive of each other. And so the first time I met Idina, it was just her and I reading through our scenes in the script and singing a little bit and just hanging out, really. And she was so cool and so nice that I was like, oh, I'm great. And luckily I knew a couple other people. So really quickly, I felt part of the family. And it really, from that day forward, it became a family. And even when we did a Zoom last week, I have all of us together. It was like, it was a special time for a lot of us, because Idina had just finished recording Frozen, and so many people were about to sort of do so much more. And so a lot of us went through a lot of things in that time personally. And we were really lucky that we were all grown-ups and got to just be there for each other. And, I know that's one lesson that I took, was just be kind and be supportive, because then people love having you around. And when they like having you around, they'll give you another job. So.
Yeah. I got to see you guys when you toured. And a friend of mine had front row seats in San Diego. We were living in Salt Lake at the time, but I'm from San Diego. So my friend was like, if you can get here, I've got this ticket for you, and it's in the front row. And I almost died, front row and to this show that I was obsessed with. And anyway, so I flew there, saw the show, came home, and I told my husband, in a little bit, it's going to Costa Mesa. We are road tripping to Costa Mesa and seeing the show again. So I got to see it twice because I was totally obsessed with it. So
that's awesome.
It was awesome. And so thanks for doing the tour.
I didn't have a choice. Idina basically looked at me and she said, I'm doing the tour, you're doing the tour. And so that was basically how I found out I was doing the tour, was Idina was like, I'm doing the tour and you're doing it because I'm not going to get new chemistry with another person. So good luck. And so I got written into our contract. It worked out very well.
That's awesome. Now, did you stay with it longer than? No,
I left when Idina left.
So when Jackie took over.
So the Benedict Costa Mesa was it. I finished. Yeah, and Matt Heitzig took over for me.
Okay. So is there anything else about like the if then experience before we get to Harry Potter that you want to share with anybody or?
No, just it really was just, it was a beautiful time, and it was just one that looking back, I had one kid for the first one. I had this song in the musical called Hey Kid, where I sung about my son, and the very first time I heard the song, even, my son was 6 weeks old. So it was a lesson for me in bringing as much of myself and my life to a role. I was just very lucky that my life happened to sort of intersect with that. And so it was a lot of fun.
So, okay, Harry Potter. I like I said, I saw the show in February, and I'm not a huge, like, I've read a couple of the books. I had seen the movies because my sons are totally into Harry Potter, and but I was never like a super Harry Potter crazy fan. But I was taking my son for a mother-son trip, and I thought this would be a great show for him to see. So got tickets to it, and I texted my husband at intermission of part 1, and I said, I do not want this to end. This is like the most entertained I have been in the theater in such a long time. It was so entertaining and wonderful, and I remember thinking, like, one part being totally immersed in it and like loving it, and one part thinking it's gonna be over. Yeah, there's a part 2, but that's gonna end too, and I'm so sad because this is amazing. So it's such a fun show. So I want a show of hands from all of you that are watching. We're gonna ask you if you know what house you are in. So if you are in Slytherin, raise your hands. If you know, if you've taken a quiz, you know if you're in Slytherin.
You can go to the wizardingworld.com and take the quiz and get sorted.
Yes. Wizardingworld.com if you don't know. Okay. Are none of you claiming Slytherin right now? Okay, whatever.
I see Rory is.
Oh, nice.
Henry.
Oh, Rory, I'm not surprised. All right.
I got sorted into Slytherin the very first time I took the test back when the test first came out on Pottermore is what it was called. It was a different test actually. And so I was sorted into Slytherin, and I was like, oh, I'm a Slytherin. And then when I booked the job, I signed back onto Pottermore, and it was like, oh, we have a new test. You have to retake the test. And I got sorted into Gryffindor. So I have a touch of Slytherin, I think.
Yeah, like Harry, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
All right. What about Ravenclaw? Mindy. I see Chloe. I see some. All right. How about Hufflepuff? Hufflepuff people, where are you?
My first cast that I was with in Harry Potter. Oh, Hufflepuff! I see that little Hufflepuff thing. Was mostly Hufflepuff. The cast at Utah was mostly Hufflepuff, and so it made actually for a really good work environment because everyone was like very lovey-dovey and very. So it was nice.
Okay, and who is Gryffindor?
All right, Gryffindor. Loving it.
All right.
Cool.
Lots of you. All right, I am too. So, okay. Well, that's fun. Okay, so can you give us kind of your brief synopsis of where the cursed child picks up in Harry's story?
1 second, hold on.
Oh, sure.
Okay, all right.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
glasses from the show. Here's my wand from the show. All right. So Harry Potter picks up from where the books leave off, which is with a chapter called 19 Years Later, I think. 22 years later. I should remember that. Anyway, so Harry Potter is sending his kids off to Hogwarts, 2 of his kids out of the 3, and Albus Severus Potter is super scared and is like he's an awkward kid, and so they made him an awkward kid. So I send my kid off, and he sort of has to live under the shadow of being Harry Potter's son, and he decides to take matters into his own hand with making his own name for himself, and ends up screwing everything up. And we spend the next 5 hours trying to fix what he screwed up, and so it's a lot of fun. It's the biggest thing I've ever done. There is like fire on stage and people turning into different people and people getting sucked into phone booths and people showing up out of nowhere. And like I clean up my desk. I have a trick where I scourgify my desk. I just go boop, 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 and all of the papers go and just organize themselves. It's pretty awesome. And so that's fun. Here, I'll talk about my wand a little bit first. If you can see, so the set designer, Christine Jones, she's the international scenic designer is what she's called. And she designed all the sets, but she also went through and made her own wands. So she designed all of the wands herself. And Harry Potter's wand, of course, is made of holly with a phoenix feather core. But then she came up with these designs. It's almost like a lightning bolt is passing through here. So it's different than the books. And so even our house banners are different because it's a play. It's not the movies. When I said the books, I meant the movies. We weren't doing the movies. We had to treat everything like it was a play. And so that meant that, like, actually this one right here is the one that they sell in the gift shop. The one that I use on stage is actually bigger than this. And that's because I'm on stage and people need to be able to see the wand. And like my scar on my forehead, in the movies, it's a little bit smaller. Well, on stage, it goes all the way across my forehead so that as many people as possible can see it. So many aspects had to be shifted for the theater. And that's one of them, and two of them. And so, when people ask whether I am like doing the movie or did I watch, I've seen all the movies, but I haven't watched them in a very long time, or whether I watched Daniel Radcliffe. And really I'm doing the book. Like what we worked on was the book and not the movies, because the movies are based on the book. And then the play is based on the books. And so that really, when we set out, was what I wanted to honor. That being said, I got hired, I think, because I had a similar vibe to what Daniel Radcliffe a similar vibe to the way Harry Potter and Daniel Radcliffe a little bit also, I think. I don't know.
Okay, so can you tell us, how did you feel when you got this call that you got?
Yeah, well, 3 weeks went by, so I auditioned, and that's another thing with actors. Like, it takes them weeks sometime to decide. And I had a month to study for Draco Malfoy, who I originally auditioned for Draco. And so I studied really hard, and then they went in, and I did my first audition, and they said, well, we want you to come back for Harry Potter. And I had like 3 days to study for that. So I buried myself in the script and in Harry Potter history online, and went in and did each scene once. There were only 2 scenes. It took about 5 minutes, but everyone seemed to really, really like it. There were like 20 people when I went into the room for my final audition, plus a camera that was taping, and then they sent that tape to J.K. Rowling. So I had to audition for basically like everybody, which was crazy and super scary. But I went in and I just focused on what I needed to do as the actor portraying a human being who happened to be named Harry Potter, who was having trouble with his son, and some weird things were going on at work. And so I did that, and they said, great job. And then I didn't hear anything for like 3 weeks, and I kept calling my agents being like, have you guys heard anything? Finally, I just was like, as an actor, you kind of have to learn to ignore it. And if good news happens, good news happens. Otherwise, you just have to exist. And I was coming back from a 4-line audition for the TV show Madam Secretary. And I was super bummed out because it took forever to get into the city. And then it was 4 stupid lines on the show. And I was a little sad about being an actor. And then I got a phone call and they said, how would you like to be Harry Potter? And I said, that I would love to be Harry Potter. And my life hasn't been the same since.
So were you cast in September of 18?
September of 2018. I couldn't tell anybody until December of 2018. And then I started performing in March of 2019. And then we were supposed to start the next year's cast, March of 2020. And here we are.
Yes, here we are, shut down, doing nothing. Interviewing you though, so something good has come out of it.
Yay!
For me. So what was your rehearsal process like before like you took over the role? Like when did you start rehearsing?
So the way a Broadway show works is they have workshops, is what they're called, where they get together and they look through the script and they try and work everything out. Well, the original British production in London, the West End production, had been workshopping it for years, and then they had already done it for a year. Then that cast came to New York about a year later and then did the show again, but only 8 people, the lead 8 people came. And so we started our process having known what they did to make that show work and having that same director. But we had 15 weeks of rehearsal. That's over 3 months of time to make it all happen again, but the way that we got to do it, which was great. So I didn't come in and have to, sometimes with a show like Lion King, when you do the musical Lion King and you go into Lion King, they have a stage manager who has a book that says exactly where every single human being on stage moves, exactly how many steps they take and where they go. And you have to do exactly that or you're not doing your job. And so it was not that. We got to discover all the characters and I got to read the books again. And anytime I had a question, I got to do my own take on Harry Potter and make it the best Harry Potter that I knew how to make it, as opposed to trying to fit into the mold that another actor had created. So I didn't have to worry about what Daniel Radcliffe did. I didn't have to worry what Jamie Parker, who originally did it, did. And so, and I had 15 weeks to do it. And normally you have 6 weeks when you rehearse a Broadway show. You have 6 weeks of rehearsal and then maybe a month of previews. And then you open up. Well, we had that, so we doubled it, 6 + 6 + 3 weeks of what we call technical rehearsal, where they readjust the lights to fit the way that we did it, where we get to go through and learn how to shoot the fire or learn what to do to shoot the fire, and all of the crazy elements and all of the stagecraft that happens. There's big staircases and all of that. And so we spent 3 weeks on stage figuring all that out in between when the other cast was doing the show for an audience. So it's pretty cool.
So when the show is running, it is not currently, but when it is running, what does your day look like? Like you already kind of mentioned what time you have to get there earlier when you were talking about
it. And like that's on Sunday. So actually I live about an hour away. It takes me an hour. It's just a 35-minute train ride. So I would leave, I get to the theater. So we start out with, and this is not typical, it is typical for the British, but they don't usually have a group warm-up, but we have a cast warm-up. Everybody has to go and either we stretch or we work out together for a half hour, 90 minutes before the show. And it's mandatory. They were like, you have to show up. So I get there 90 minutes before the show. I'm usually there about 2 hours before the show to just get in before we warm up. So I can do a little bit of stretching so that I can prepare for the warm up. And then we would do that. Then I would head back to my dressing room, relax for a little bit, go put on my makeup and my hair and my wig. So the scar that I mentioned, it's a latex piece. And so there's a woman, Tiffany Hicks, and she would put a little bit of alcohol on my forehead, and then the alcohol makes the latex sticky, and she mashed it on like this, and all of a sudden there'd be like this raised scar. And then she'd clean it up a little bit with a brush, and then she would paint in the little groove right on my forehead. And then I would put a scar on my hand that says, "I must not tell lies," because that in the 5th book, Dolores Umbridge makes Harry Potter write with a cursed quill. And so I have that on every single show. Whether people can see it or not, I have to do it. If my arms were exposed farther up past here, I would actually probably put the scar from when Harry got bit by the basilisk also. But these are all the little technical elements that I love that make it super cool. And yeah, so then I would go over, that would take about 15 minutes. Then I would go get my wig on, and they put wig prep on my head, which is like a band, like an elastic band that goes around. And then they put the wig onto that. And then I get that secured, and then I go put my costume on and go do the show. So hair and makeup takes about a half hour, and then it takes me about 5 minutes to get dressed, and then I go do the show and I hop on stage. And Harry Potter is one of those crazy shows where I don't get much of a break. So I spend most of the time, if I'm not on the stage, I'm either walking back to my dressing room to go get changed or changing on stage and then quickly going to my next spot where I need to enter to go do another scene. And so for me, my movement around, in fact, everyone's movement, the show's very technical. So my very first week of shows, I forgot my glasses. I left them, I don't know where, I can't even remember where I put them. I think I left them in my dressing room. And I got on stage and I realized I was about to enter and I went, I don't have my glasses. And we keep lots of glasses on the stage. And the stage manager went, it's okay. And she grabbed a glasses case where normally there would be glasses, and she opened it up. It was empty. And so she was like, and I had to enter. So I entered, and then the very next scene, we make this transition where we walk in a circle sort of around and end up in Professor McGonagall's office. Well, instead, I ran off stage and was like, I need glasses. Where are my glasses? And the stage manager went, move! Because a huge staircase was coming off stage and almost like killed me. I almost like broke my leg because I forgot my glasses because I was a goofball. And needless to say, I haven't forgot my glasses since. Maybe once I forgot them. And what's funny is I had friends at that show, and they were like, oh, we just thought that because I was sleeping at the beginning of that scene. They're like, oh, we just thought that you just fell asleep without your glasses on. Like, we didn't even think about it. So
Nice.
it looked like you forgot your glasses. I was like, I did forget my glasses.
Right.
But it looked like Harry Potter forgot my glasses. So sometimes when you're panicked and you think something's a huge deal on stage, like nobody would even notice. Like, we spent so much time making the scar perfect, and like the people past the 10th row can't even see it. So, you just have to realize that sometimes you're doing things for you, and just be happy with what you do and the way you do it, and do it because you love it and because you want to do it, as opposed to just know that the audience probably doesn't notice a lot of stuff.
Do you have a favorite scene that you do? Like, you get to it and you're just super excited that it's there?
Well, yeah, my favorite scene's the last scene of this show, mostly because it's been such an adventure, and it really is it's a wonderful ending. We've gone through all of 5 hours of craziness, and then it's just Harry Potter talking to his son. And I think it's a very beautiful scene because it's just honest and simple, and I think a perfect way to end it. And so that's always my favorite. And it also just means it's the end of the night too. So I get to go home.
Go back to your family.
Yeah.
Do you notice or feel a difference in doing, since it plays in 2 parts, so you do each part 4 times a week, right?
Yeah.
Instead of 8 times a week if you were doing like If Then or Cry Baby.
Yeah. So normally on a Broadway schedule, we do 8 shows a week, which is crazy when you think about it. So you have Monday off. Well, Harry Potter, we have Monday and Tuesday off, but then we do part 1 and part 2 on Wednesday. So we do a full day of shows. And then the only time we do them on different days is Thursdays part 1, Fridays part 2. And at first it was a little weird because to start the show in the evening is a very weird sensation because I was just used to doing it in the morning. Like, I get there in the morning and this and that, and then all of a sudden it was so weird to do it at night. The audiences tend to be the only difference for me at this point, now that I'm in, is sometimes Thursday and Friday nights, it's more people who've just finished work or maybe got to go after school. And so they tended to be a little rowdier, which was always fun. It was more like the Harry Potter fans came on Thursday and Friday nights. I don't know why. But by Friday, yeah, it was fun. And then, but it is nice to just get it all out of the way in one day. It makes for a really long day, but at least I'm sort of stay in that mode of Harry Potter instead of having to go home and then wake up and get my kids to school and do life stuff and then pick my kids up from school and then rush to the theater. And then be like, wait, where am I? Oh, part 2. Okay, great. So it's, I don't know. I just feel lucky to be up there and be lucky to be working and doing such a great role. So they could tell me to come in and do it 4 times in a day, and I'd be like, well, at least I got a job.
Right. All right. Well, I want to ask you a couple more questions, but I also want to make sure I have time for them to ask a couple questions. So I'm just gonna some quick
And
ones.
we can go a little over if you want.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time and your family.
Very much. Yes, thank you very much.
You're like, my family has seen enough of me. Thank you.
I know, they're sick of me. No.
So, who is the coolest person who has come to see the show?
Probably Billie Eilish was probably the coolest person. Do we know Billie Eilish? Do you guys know Billie Eilish? There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So she was awesome. She had just done Saturday Night Live the night before. And then her and Phineas came, actually with their parents and stuff. And she was like, I was like, how was Saturday Night Live? That's amazing. She's like, yeah, that was cool. I just can't believe I got to come to Harry Potter. This was the coolest thing. And she was so sweet and so excited to be there. And I'll tell you, this is something that I tell everybody. She sent a thank you note because we gave her a little tour backstage and met with her. And she sent a thank you note. And I just want to say that she's the only person that we've ever given a tour backstage to that sent a thank you note. And it just shows, like, for me, I'm like, that meant a lot. And I remember when I was just starting out in my career, I would send thank you notes to people. I know it means a lot to people when you take the time to write them and thank them. And that was just something I was like, Billie Eilish is like tops in my book, and her parents are awesome. You know, I was like, this class. So she's been one of my favorite people backstage.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is your favorite play that you have not, or musical, that you have not been in? So just your favorite show that you haven't been in.
That haven't been
Or
in.
a favorite. You can.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, Ragtime, the musical Ragtime, like it came right at that time when Rent and well, a little bit later than Rent, but like that was one of the first cast albums I had. And it's a beautiful musical. And so
Was it the first show you saw on Broadway?
And it was the first show I saw at Broadway.
It was in the theater that you're in network, kind of.
And it was in the Lyric Theater. Yeah, at the time it was, I think, the Ford Center or something like that. Or yeah.
And you saw LaChanze, right? Like,
and I saw LaChanze. Yeah, so you know the whole deal. And so
If
one
Then
of my friends from If Then was playing the lead at the time, which was crazy. But yeah, Ragtime was probably it. And the composers have become friends. Like they're, you know, it's sort of a surreal thing to be able to meet your heroes and then actually realize that they're really cool people. And so, yeah, Ragtime's probably one of my favorites.
Do you have a dream role other than one that you've already done?
No, I mean, I'd love to do Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. I'd love to do Carousel on Broadway. There are certain things now for me. I mean, some people say, like, I don't know if it's been written yet. It really is like what the right role for me. And this has been a big lesson and why I think I've stuck with it and done okay when I wasn't working was like, well, the right role comes along that teaches you the right things come into your life when, you know, the universe gives you what you need and never gives you more than you can handle. And, so really it's like the role that I'm working on is the one that I'm meant to be in. And so I would love to be able to say, like, I mean, Harry Potter came around and there's a Shakespeare 2 plays called Henry IV Part 1 and Henry IV Part 2. And in it, one of my favorite roles that I've never gotten to do in Shakespeare is Prince Hal. And so when people ask my dream role, like I said, really, what I put out into the universe before Harry Potter was I want to do Prince Hal, which is, you know, a widely known British lead in a. Yes, that's okay, Willa. Okay. No, you may not. Okay. We can't watch YouTube. You guys know YouTube. It's terrible. Anyway, so I put out in the universe that I wanted to be Prince Hal, and I ended up with Harry Potter. And so, the similarities between the two stories are very.
I have a 3-year-old. It's totally
Yes.
fine.
Yes.
I told
just
my
don't
husband, keep the 3-year-old away, or he's gonna
I
come.
know. And unfortunately, my wife has a business meeting right now, so
It's totally.
it's okay. They're watching TV. It's fine. A little screen time is okay. I'll say that much. So yes. So probably still one of my dream roles is probably something Shakespearean. Yes. Do you want to say hi to everybody? This is Willa right here.
Hi, Willa.
You may not, but you can watch TV still. Okay. All right. I don't know what's happening right now. What's happening? So now my biggest role is dad, and that's what I do, because my wife is the one who's making the money right now, because Broadway shut down. So I don't really, but luckily I'm lucky she has a great job. And the smartest thing I did was try and save money too, because I know I'm an actor and I know I'm going to be unemployed. So, you have to set up a buffer, and hopefully this doesn't last longer than my buffer.
Yes. I don't think you can survive on Zoom meetings for too long.
No, it's just I'm like, money is so not like, it's not why I do this.
Right. Okay, so questions from the peanut gallery. How about this? I will, if you put your hand up so that James can hear somebody other than my voice, I will click on you. Just keep your questions appropriate. Okay, Maya, go for it.
Hi. So I was just wondering, what do you do to prepare for like the hour before the show? What do you do to prepare for your character?
Well, I'm so far into doing it now. Like I've been doing Harry Potter for so long that I don't have to work on it as much. But I actually used to go through the script. I would sit down with the script and pick a scene. I just went in order, kept going through, and I would work my accent. Actually, when I really first started, and it helped just see the words in a new way. So I had the vocal coach, the dialect coach, Andrew Wade. One of the techniques he gave me like this little plastic widget, and I would put it in between my teeth, I guess, about this big. I would go through every single line of the play with him. And so what I would do before the show for the first couple months was put that thing in and go, they Voldemort. Actually, you guys want to try this? Okay, you could take 2 fingers, maybe take 2 fingers, right in between your teeth, right here. Now you're going to say, Voldemort's allies have been showing movement for a few months now. Voldemort's allies have been showing movement for a few months now. So, Voldemort's allies have been showing movement for a few months now. Comes out very strange. But what it does, when you're British, when you speak in a British accent, your mouth works a bit more than what a lazy American, just we kind of talk and it's a little lazy and it hangs out. Well, when you're British, everything needs to be a bit more precise, a bit more worked in the forward part of your mouth. So when you're speaking, it sounds a bit more British. I had the dialogue, and that's what Voldemort's allies have been showing movement for a few months now. And so that would help me sort of get warmed up so that when I would come in and say the words, I would sound British.
Someone in the chat is asking if you could do a few lines or a very short monologue from the show.
Any monologues? Most of my monologues are yelling because Harry Potter gets really frustrated with his son a lot. I've never been asked that. That's funny, like, because there's not really like is there a monologue? I don't know. I could tell you one time where I almost made up a monologue on stage. So there's this big battle at the end. Okay, so this is better than a monologue because I'm giving you like secrets. And M. Night Shyamalan was in the audience this night too. So there's a big battle and we are shooting fire at each other, me and the bad person, who I can't tell you. One night there was no fire. And then that person, the bad person, got stuck in the air. All of a sudden, just all of the sounds happened all at the same time, and there was zero fire. And we were just holding our wands at each other going, and I didn't know what to do. And I almost went into a monologue about how, talking about Voldemort and all of this stuff. I was like, how do I save the show? We're just frozen here. What do I do? And so I had worked in my head, if it had gone on this much longer, I was about to do an entire monologue about how Voldemort doesn't understand friendship and giving and all of this stuff that I'd worked in just my head. And I was about to, and thank goodness everything started up again. There was no fire for the rest of it, but it was one of the craziest experiences on stage, and I almost did a monologue. Let's see, Harry Potter, Specto Patronum. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of things that wouldn't spoil the plot, and monologue.
Well, thanks for telling.
My favorite line from the show is when we're about to go onto platform 9 3/4, and he says, "Don't stop and don't be scared. You'll crash right into it. That's very important. Best to do it at a run if you're nervous." And so that's like my favorite line from the show is that, oh, I should have done it with this. Best to do it at a run if you're nervous.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and that's, yeah. But I haven't even spoken in a British accent very much in a very long time too, which is crazy. Which once we start gearing back up, I'm going to have to, I walk my dog and I work my lines when I walk the dog. So it's me, we were in the winter, so it'd be freezing cold, and I'd be walking the dog at like 6:45 in the morning, and I'd be going, my mouth would be frozen because it was so cold outside, which actually worked very well for the accent because then I had to work my mouth more.
Nice. Okay, Rory, I'm unmuting you. Ask your question.
When you were doing the show, did you ever kind of slip back into the British accent when you weren't on stage?
Yeah, that's something that just happens with us backstage because there are a couple British people. So it just makes it easier to have sort of a casual tap into it so that like just liquid use when I'm speaking and things like attitude and things like that, just so that it's not such an extreme to bounce back and forth. So it would not be surprising to hear somebody from the cast speaking in like a sort of British accent, because otherwise those muscles and that direction of where you need to place it gets all messed with. And so, sometimes we would just be in the green room just speaking with kind of British accents, like just certain words would come out and you'd be like, well, that was British. Okay. And that'd be, yeah.
All right, Chloe.
So, who played Hermione and Ron?
So Hermione, like originally or with my cast, Hermione is a woman named Jenny Jules, who's awesome. And she's actually one of the few Londoners she's British. And she's also Black, which I think, so all of the Hermiones are Black, which I think is awesome, because there's nothing really in the books about, it says she has curly hair. That's the only stipulation. And Noma, Noma, who did originally Deswemi, I think is her last name, is actually one of the best actresses I've ever seen on stage. And so that's one of the great things about theater. It's like, it doesn't necessarily matter what you look like. It's what you bring to a role. And so, and Jenny Jules, who's doing it, is a brilliant actress. So it's great that it doesn't, even with an iconic character, like from what Emma Watson did in the movies, it's like, it doesn't matter what you look like. The audience goes, oh, that's Hermione? Great, you're Hermione. It's just like when they look at me, great, that's Harry Potter? Then here's Harry Potter. Or if I was like, hey, I'm 11 years old right now, and audiences, that's the magic of theater. If you tell them to believe something, they just want a good story. So they're like, okay, great, you're 11, let's move on. What's happening? And so that's something really cool. And then Ron Weasley is played by Paul Thornley, who did the original British production, who's been a part of the production for this year, going into this year. He's come back. And Matt Mueller did it last year. It was awesome. So fun, wonderful people.
So someone asked in the chat, is there anything you can tell us about how the pyrotechnics work, or is that all magic?
Well, I can say if I were doing pyrotechnics for a show, I would have these really cool, if you saw them, it would look almost like these like blaster cannons. Like it looks like a the front end of a super soaker with a nozzle, and it shoots a crazy liquid that kind of smells like lighter fluid. And one might be, you can have lighter fluid be different colors. So maybe there would be like a green flame or a yellow flame. And so, so I would use a machine like that and hide it somewhere so that when someone casts like this, it would look like I was casting it, even though the thing that was shooting would be hidden somewhere.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, if I were going to do it, I would think about it doing it like that.
Being a theater person, as I watched the show, I was like, okay, that one I can kind of figure out how they're doing. And then there were some effects and I was like how are they doing this?
I know. And I felt the first time I saw Harry Potter, because I got to see the original London and original Broadway cast. And so I was like, I can't believe I get to do this. How do they do all this stuff? And my wife was like, you better tell me how they do all of this stuff. And there were a couple things I didn't tell her for a very long time, and then eventually told her how they work. But with the show, with some of the magic tricks, we would work on them 3 times a week, 45 minutes every single day, and for 15 weeks. So if you can imagine the amount of time that some of those tricks would take, where we would just do it and do it over again and do it over again, and then talk about how we did it. And then the magic supervisor would take a video with his phone and then show us how we did and say, well, we could change this, or we should do this, because magic is one of those things where, you just, it's, if you have something, if I believe, I wish I had something better to do it with, but like if I believe something's gone and it's up there, that I threw my glasses up, and then they appear, it's like, I've done that motion. I haven't done that motion that much, but like, if I were talking to you and let's say I were here and all of a sudden I made that appear, but I worked on it so hard and how to make it look like it was easy and I didn't have to think about it, then the audience doesn't know to look for a magic trick. And it's so automatic that it looks like magic. I mean, sometimes some of the greatest magicians, like, how they're doing the trick and you see them make something appear and you're just like, I know how you did that. And yet it's magic because I believe it. And I've worked so hard on it that I'm not doing anything. It's just right there. And it takes a lot of work, and I got so sick of some of these magic tricks, and then we just kept doing them, and I got even more sick of them. And it got to the point where I was like, if I do this one more time, I'm going to jump off the bridge. And then we did it more, and then eventually it looked really good, and it made the audience really happy, and that it was all worth it.
Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, you bet.
I will click on the Carolyn.
How do you avoid getting
Did you? Yeah, we couldn't hear. Can you maybe come closer, or if you're?
How do you avoid getting voice cracks?
I don't. I mean, I warm my voice up before the show, so we do a warm up. You had a lot of like warming my voice up so that my muscles know what they're doing. Sometimes I do a lot of yelling in the show because Harry Potter is really frustrated with work and family life. And sometimes my voice cracks, but that's if my voice cracks, Harry Potter's voice cracks. And I've done musicals before, and sometimes like I've done If Then, I've done it almost with no voice. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And my voice would sometimes go up, but the audience just heard that, and if it's not a problem for me, it's not a problem for them usually. So if something goes wrong, which it does, it's live theater, especially on If Then, Adina would have no problem being like, oh, that picture just fell, like I was doing a scene with her and a picture fell off the wall. And she went and she looked at it and she cracked up, and then she told the audience about it and they cracked up. She said, this doesn't normally happen. This is crazy. And then I went, I told you need a man around the house. And then I put it away and we went on with the scene, and the audience just said, oh, that was amazing. We got to see something really special that might not ever happen again. And so something like my voice cracking, as long as I make it Harry Potter's voice that's cracking, it's okay. And so Harry's voice does crack sometimes. And if it's okay with me, it's okay with them, because we move on past that, because the story is more important. I always talk a little bit about my acting and the way I approach acting. You have what's called actor concerns, which is James, the actor, and the things I'm worried about, which might be like looking good or, making sure I'm drinking water even. And then you have story concerns, which are Harry Potter trying to understand, Harry needs to understand his son, or he needs to save his son. His son's been kidnapped and he has to save him. If I make the story concern more important than my voice cracking, it doesn't matter, because the story is the important part. And so I train my voice really well. And then if anything bad goes wrong, I make it about the story and just try and tell the best story I possibly can in the most honest way possible. And so I don't pretend that my voice is feeling good that day. I pretend that my voice hurts, and I just use the years and years of technique that I have to be healthy and maintain a long career and be able to do the show.
Thank you so much for your time and for doing this with us. Can you guys, I guess I could unmute you all. We might have a ton of feedback. Could you wave a thank you to him?
Yay. And Carter, is that the Marauders map?
Or something? What'd you say?
The Marauders map, I think. Yeah, Carter has the Marauders map up.
Oh, nice.
You guys, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah. Final thoughts. Do I have any final thoughts? I don't know. Just look, be kind to each other, because you never know where you're going to run into somebody next. And as you can tell, this world is hurting right now. So, all the best. And Melinda, are you a Ravenclaw, Melinda? For sure you're a Ravenclaw. She has another question. Well, if you want to ask your teacher, if anybody has any other questions that there are burning questions, you can just tell them to Lori, and you know what, she'll email me and I can write a quick response back to you guys if you have anything that's really, really burning, okay? But thank you so much for having me. And like I said, just do your best and be kind to each other.
Thank you, James.
Oh my God. Until next time.
Yes.
Now, how do I get out of here?
New York opens again. All right. Well, I'm just going to end the meeting and then you'll be out. So.
Great. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.